Drink Georgetown Tavern Beer, your new locally brewed domestic-style lager. 4.2% alcohol. Cheap, good, local.
All right, it's In the Bloody Trenches with Rob Staton, SeahawksDraftBlog.com. You can follow Rob on social media at Rob Staton. Check out his YouTube page, Rob Staton Football. His weekly appearance brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, makers of Manny's Pale Ale, Bodie's Offa, Rogers Pilsner, the Tavern Beer, Tasting Room and Beer Garden open 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Visit georgetownbeer.com. Nice, easy, comfortable win for someone that is 9 hours ahead, and it affects your lifestyle. Good for you. You probably wanted to send a thank you card to the Seahawks after that one.
Yes, definitely. I'm hoping that the same will be the case later this week as well, because obviously this game begins at 1 o'clock in the morning against the Cardinals for me. And then I will have to work on Friday. And I also have the full intention of watching as much of the Ryder Cup as possible. So I'm hoping to stay awake. I've also got to go to Oxford, which is about 3 hours away from where I live, for work on Saturday. So, I've got a lot on. So I'm hoping this could be a great sporting week for me. You know, if the Seahawks beat the Cardinals and then if Europe win the Ryder Cup, it would be fantastic.
You want to wager? I am not. I don't even really want to put a wager on the Ryder Cup because Jim and I have discussed this. I don't feel good about it. I don't feel good about it at all. I like Team Europe. I like the fact that they said, nope, we're not taking money because it's about pride for us. Meanwhile, you greedy SOBs are taking money. I know they're giving it to charity or some to charity, but still, they took money. Yeah, I don't like it.
I don't feel...
And I like your players. They're more likable.
Yeah, I'm not that confident. I think that for many years, because I think over here, we do the kind of, representing your country in sports thing a bit more than America. But the States don't take the American baseball team around the world that much and play other teams. And, the basketball is the Olympics. And with the ice hockey, I thought that was great, that tournament they did where they played Canada and Sweden. And I can't remember who the fourth team was. But, over here, we do that all the time. Like, you are constantly representing your country for free. You do not get any extra money for it. It's all about sort of national pride. And then when it came round to the Ryder Cup, the European teams always felt like they were well up for it because they were representing something. And the American team always felt a little bit like they were like, well, I have to be on his team. Like, this is an individual sport. Like, why do I don't like that guy and I don't like him. And now we're a team. And then Europe would hammer the Americans, and that happened several times. I think it's changed now. I think America will win the Ryder Cup. I don't think the European team will win, but I think we might sort of settle. What do I know? But we might settle into this thing where you guys win in the States and we win in Europe, and it just carries on that way for a while.
I have regret is then when you were in town and we went to that miserable dinner that we didn't bring up with our guest. We didn't bring up the Ryder Cup. That was the only thing missing from that conversation with him was, hey, who do you think's going to win the Ryder Cup? That would have topped probably the entire dinner. All right, so let's go back to the Seahawks. Again, a comfortable win. Special teams was the story. Offensively, they were efficient. Defense was everywhere, and such a huge win, right, Rob? Because of what. The short week, you had defenders who you probably could have played if you really wanted to, but you kept them out to let them get healthy. And then on top of that, you're beating the shit out of them. So then you get to rest your starters with 13 minutes left in the game. It was just a win-win all the way around for Seattle.
Yeah, absolutely ideal. And I think we were all thinking that watching it at halftime, how much longer the starter's going to stay on the field. And because of the nature of the game, I kind of had one eye on the Seahawks and one eye on the red zone to watch the Cardinals against the Niners, because obviously that's such an important game in the NFC West. And to see how close that was and how it went right down to the wire, and it was a little bit like the Seahawks game against the Niners, I couldn't help but feel really pleased that Seattle were able to rest players and that the Cardinals were playing in that kind of a game. And obviously James Conner got very seriously injured in that game. And on a short week, it has to benefit the Seahawks that they gave the Saints a pasting, and the Cardinals lost by a point. So hopefully this is all good. The Seahawks are on a 7-game winning streak against the Cardinals. They handled them fairly well last season. Kyler Murray, I'm in the camp that doesn't just hammer Kyler Murray all the time. I think he has obviously got some amazing natural talent, but whether he is the kind of quarterback who can be patient and disciplined against the Mike McDonald defense remains to be seen. So I'm very confident, Puck. I'm hopeful that when that game finishes on at 5 o'clock in the morning on Friday, UK time, that I'll be going to bed with a smile on my face.
Well, and I think now you're facing a team that just lost. Some would argue, really the heartbeat of their football team, and James Conner with an ankle injury. Meanwhile, another foe in your division, their best defensive player now is lost for the season. And again, this is not to wish injuries on people and the opposition, but as from a Seattle perspective, you sit back and go, well, that makes those teams worse off, and it just does. So it benefits the other teams in the division. And so I think you're catching Arizona at really just a perfect time. And to me, I never want to say, hey, this is a must-win game, because what are we talking about? It's the 4th game of the season. I'll just say this. This is you can't lose this game. With what they have sustained, with that loss to James Conner, to me, it really sets. They go down there tomorrow and kick a game against Arizona, which you can do. It's just the NFL. Weird things happen. Browns beat the Packers. But they'd take a step back, right? I think we all agree on that if they were to go down there and lose tomorrow.
I think if you want to be taken seriously, you've got to win that game. If you just go and lose to the Cardinals and your 2 wins are against the Saints, who may have the number 1 overall pick next year, and the Steelers, who just look like they don't look very good. The Steelers don't look very good. If they're your 2 wins and your 2 losses are 2 division opponents, it's going to be quite hard for anybody to think, do you know what? The Seahawks are right on the brink of a great run here, and this is going to be an amazing season. People are just going to go, this is more the same. This is another team that's going to be sort of around that 9-10 win mix, if they can avoid injuries, and that's fine. But we want them to be better than that. You want to sort of believe that this can be a season where they do make the playoffs, that they can get into the postseason and not just make up the numbers, maybe even give someone a game, whether that's in the wild card round or in the divisional round. I think expecting anything more than that's probably a little bit optimistic given the state of the team. But then the NFC seems quite open, and some of the great teams that you thought might be there, like the Packers, they lost to the Browns at the weekend. And you look at the way that the Eagles have struggled a bit so far in their first 3 games, even though they've won. You mentioned the Niners. The Niners are 3-0, but they've just lost their best player. The Rams look great for 3/4 of the Eagles game and then just pissed that game away at the end. So, with all that given, you do think there's an opening for a team to maybe get hot at the right time and get into the postseason, maybe a little bit like the Mariners, and get into the offseason there with some momentum. So the Seahawks, if they're going to be that team, I think you're right. They have to be able to go to Arizona and get the job done. It doesn't mean they have to blow the Cardinals out. It doesn't have to be a 20-point win or anything, but just make sure that you're on that plane back to Seattle with the win.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Right? If you win by 1, you win by 30. It all counts in the end. And you look at their division right now. You can scroll through. You could probably make an argument, for others. But I think top to bottom, they're playing one of the, if not the toughest division, certainly one of the toughest divisions right now. It appears early on in the season. We've discussed a lot about Sam Darnold in the offseason, and not a Sam Darnold, Geno Smith thing, but just Sam Darnold, his own guy. I think, a lot of us didn't know what to expect, what we were going to get from Sam Darnold. That was the big offseason debate, right? Right, Rob? It was, well, you're going to get the Sam Darnold that was the first 14, 15 games of the season. Are you going to get postseason Sam Darnold? You're going to get a hybrid of the two. So far, so good, right? 3 games in, he's completing 70% of his passes. He's averaging 9 yards per attempt. He's had a couple hiccups in there. But he has passed, I think, a lot of tests here early on for the Seahawks.
I'm increasingly convinced that if you do not have Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow, that you've got to, if you're a franchise, all of the evidence is pointing to these reclamation projects that go to the wrong team. Sam Darnold has now had, a decent stint of 6 games in Carolina, a good season with the Vikings, and now has started well for the Seahawks, having just been really bad with the Jets as the 3rd overall pick. Baker Mayfield's playing probably as well as any quarterback in the NFL right now. And he was cast aside by the Browns and the Panthers as well, just as Darnold was. And he's ended up in a good spot with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Daniel Jones has obviously suffered through some challenging times in New York. They look like an absolute shambles. And he's gone to the Colts, and all of a sudden he's playing quite well. And if you're not able to draft that player who is going to end up in the Hall of Fame, which there's a decent chance that Mahomes and Josh Allen will achieve that in their careers, then you're probably better off looking for these guys, because the draft results that we're seeing from some of these players taken early the returns are just not there. Teams are taking these. Tennessee's a great example of this. They took Malik Willis. They're a shambles. It didn't work for him. They then take Will Levis. They're still a shambles. It didn't work for him. Cam Ward threw an interception that Will Levis was throwing last season when he was the starter. It may not work for Cam Ward in Tennessee. Like, just recycling through these young players. And I think the good teams have to look for the reclamation projects. And Darnold, to me, just looks solid. He just looks solid with that extra bit of physical quality that when he needs to sort of make that play early on, when he scrambles away from pressure and gets to the left-hand side and throws it across his body for a big first down, you think, yeah, that's why he went 3rd overall. So I couldn't be happier with the way that he's playing, and long may it continue.
It's one of the most interesting, I think, thought processes or debates about quarterbacks. I think it's simply, and you do a lot of it, right? SeahawksDraftBlog.com, looking at quarterbacks. Who's going to be the guy in next year's class?
Whew.
And I think it's the most difficult position in all of sports to pick, to project. I think Sam Darnold, the talent in him was always there to warranted to be picked 3rd overall. Yes. But it's where you go. What organization are you going to? Like, he went to an organization that was just awful, and honestly has been awful forever. Like, it's really has not been good. I know there was a time with Mark Sanchez and all that, but I mean good. And we're talking Joe Namath. We're talking the 60s. And, I just think that the culture of not winning, bad front office, bad coaches. And then I think when you throw in a quarterback like that, well, then that quarterback's asked to come in and save the day. That quarterback usually is not ready for it. It's some can be, but we're talking about generational talents. Peyton Manning was ready for it. He was ready for that because he's a generational core. I mean, he's like, we're talking about one of, arguably the best quarterback in the history of the sport. You can make an argument with him. There's very few like that. So to me, it's all about where you get selected and which organization you go to. We've used this example a million times, and I'll use it again. I don't know if Patrick Mahomes, and maybe he is, and it all comes to the top. Usually talent rises, but I think it'd be an interesting case study if we could go back and hit the rewind button. He gets selected by somebody else. Is he Patrick Mahomes? Does he have this much success? He got to sit behind a pretty good quarterback, a veteran guy, but he also got to go to a damn good head coach who understands offense, who understands how to coach quarterbacks. So I think a lot of times it's always about fit and guys age and they get better. And for Sam Darnold, at least early on, it appears that, the years, Rob, that he's spent in this league, he's been able to get more comfortable at every stop he's gone to.
I think it's such a huge thing. And we're seeing this with the Giants now, is that I can't help but feel like, look, Russell Wilson played really badly the other day. I can't help but feel, though, there's a little bit of pressure, whether that's internally with the coach and the GM or whether that's from the ownership, that if you do not do something quick to make this exciting, you are going to get fired. So now Jackson Dart is, and then maybe Jackson Dart's ready. Maybe he's going to excel and he's going to be the next really interesting young quarterback. But now he's going to be thrust into this when all of the noise in the offseason was that they're not going to rush this guy. And it was the same with Michael Penix a year ago. Well, you signed Kirk Cousins to the big contract. You intend to let Penix sort of just learn the ropes, and in his good time, he will eventually take over. And what happens, halfway through the season, Kirk Cousins isn't getting it done. You feel a bit of pressure. Michael Penix ends up coming into the lineup. This is the problem, is that it's not even just that a team like the Jets is always a threat to draft somebody in the top 5 and then ruin their career before it's even begun. You could even make the same case from like Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville and places like that, where it has not worked out for a player who was almost being rated as highly as Andrew Luck when he came out, and he just has never reached those heights. It's also these teams who perhaps aren't necessarily quite as badly as runners as the Jets are, but the quarterbacks find themselves in these situations. And to Sam Darnold's amazing credit, to have the maturity after it was at Carolina to basically write off a full season, to go and be the backup in San Francisco, to go and work with Kyle Shanahan, and as it happens, Clint Kubiak as well, and just take a step back and then pick his next team carefully. And for that team to be coached by Kevin O'Connell and to then have the kind of season that he had last year. And actually, I was thinking about this because he was fantastic last season, apart from those final 2 games. And currently, he's PFF's top-rated quarterback. Maybe Sam Darnold's really good. Maybe Sam Darnold's not the reason why they fell apart in those final 2 games. Maybe it's because Minnesota's line stinks. Maybe it's because they just, to me, seem like the kind of team that you'd always fancy a little bit to blow it in the playoffs, the Vikings. They seem like a good regular season team to me. Maybe he's really good. And maybe the Seahawks are going to be the beneficiaries of that because they've signed him to a team-friendly contract. And if he can get them to 11 wins, let's just say, let's be somewhat conservative, even though we had 14 last year, and they can win the NFC West and they can get to the playoffs and they can win a playoff game, they've played a blinder and they'll be set up because he's only 28 years old. Like, he's not 30-odd like Geno Smith was. He's 28. You've got a few years in this guy.
Yeah. And I just think that if it doesn't work out, you just mentioned it before, again, the financial commitment is not there. And so you can easily walk away, but it's just a lot to like about him. He just seems a real natural leader, a guy that is very well liked, it appears, in that locker room, comes across as someone who is not, the quarterback is the biggest position in the sport, but he doesn't carry himself that way. And he comes off very relatable, to his teammates. He was, and again, they're going to bring this up with Russell Wilson and all that. For Russell, it just never didn't feel like he had that same connection, maybe with his teammates. And maybe it's unfair because I'm not inside there. I don't know what they were personally like. Maybe he did. But I always thought like Matt Hasselbeck, the way he would interact with Robbie Toback, those two guys are going back and forth. I can imagine you can probably see this, and Seahawks fans watching and listening could probably see Matt Hasselbeck after practice one Thursday, turning to Toback and Chris Gray and Walter Jones and Sean Locklear going, "Hey, let's you guys want to go down to the pub and grab some beers?" Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. I never could see that with Russell. Darnold, I can. He has this interaction last week. He's mic'd up talking to Gray Zabel. Just a little glimpse into his personality and how he carries himself. And I think on top of that, you saw some stuff last year. After a big win in Minnesota, the reaction of the Vikings players inside there. I think when you're leader of your football team, most of that is the quarterback is kind of just like you, one of the guys, and they've talked about that. I think that carries a lot of weight inside an NFL locker room.
It definitely does, and I think for me, one of the better examples of this. This might seem like a bit of a left field suggestion, but one of the best examples of a quarterback who was like that was Carson Palmer. It always felt a little bit like he could relate to everybody, and he could be one of the guys that he was very driven. Obviously, had an awful lot of talent there as well, and I always hated the fact that playing against him, he was such a tremendous, probably one of the more underrated players, and the injury situation and coming close but never quite getting over the line with the Cardinals and with the Bengals was probably an issue for him. But I definitely felt like he had a bit of that about him. And then you look at so many of these quarterbacks, Puck, and they just don't have that. Like, it's not just Russell who perhaps struggled to relate to the teams in Seattle. You know, Aaron Rodgers will be very much a mixed bag, I imagine, when it comes to sort of meshing with his teammates. And you look across, and I imagine Trevor Lawrence maybe have a bit of that. You know, I can't imagine that he's necessarily one of the guys all the time, but there are definitely players who, when they come into the league and they pull that off. I remember talking to a former GM in the NFL, and I asked him, what are you really looking for in a quarterback? Like, give me the sort of the top line on this. And he said, we need somebody who is going to walk into that huddle, third down, game of the season, and he's going to say, guys, I've got this. And everyone just kind of like respects him and looks up to him. And that was apparently the most important thing. You just sort of having that level of command and respect. And you can see why. You know, it's quite hard to turn around to someone who looks like an NFL offensive lineman. That's like an alpha, as much of an alpha as they come, and they're 300 pounds. And that, you know, imagine saying to Abe Lucas something unconvincing to Abe Lucas in a voice that cracks. It's not going to work, is it? You've got to turn to these people and go, right, I've got this. Here we go. Here's what we're doing. I'm in control. Let's do this. It appears that Sam Darnold has got a little bit of that about him. So it'll all, and also he's talented. Like, you don't go third overall, like you said. Like, he was supposed to be the guy that went first overall. And the Browns saw something in Baker Mayfield. And the people who are making decisions, I think, have been validated somewhat in Baker's time in Tampa Bay by feeling that way. But you had Saquon second overall, and then you had Sam Darnold. I mean, it's not a bad trio there, is it?
A couple of last things. Torrey Horton, last two games. You know, you're seeing why a lot of people talked about, God, that was just a great steal for them. It's why Jackson Smith and Jigba talked him so much during training camp. There's an explosiveness to him, a potential of where he can flash. He's a game wrecker. He's a game changer that was highlighted by that punt return. But we're starting to see him be incorporated more into that offense, and they need it because they need a guy on the outside like him.
He was a player, you know, I watched him at Colorado State. He just stood out. Like, it was obvious that he was better than a fifth round range. And the only reason he fell was because of the injuries. And he was so consistent. And I always felt like he had just a little bit of DeAndre Hopkins about him in his sort of frame and style. But he's gone to the fifth round, and it's potentially going to be one of the draft picks. And I don't know if you saw this, Puck, but Clint Kubiak was asked yesterday, who does he remind you of anybody as a rookie? And he went, yeah, I'm not going to tell you. And then later on, he blurted out Justin Jefferson, which I thought was hilarious because Clint Kubiak says nothing in his press conferences. You could ask him, the best question ever, and he will just say the most boring answer you've ever heard. And yet there he is delivering the line of the year. That Torrey Horton reminds him of Justin Jefferson, one of the best receivers to enter the NFL in his generation. Mm-hmm. So if you can't get excited about that, you know, what can you get excited about? And he's off to a great start.
I'm excited about just this rookie class in general, and excited to see what's in store for all of them the rest of the year. Excited for Horton. I mean, Gray Zabel. I think we talked. I don't know if I was with you last week. I can't remember who I mentioned this to, but I just watch. Like when it was with Dugar. All I do when they're on offense is watch him. I don't watch the ball. I don't watch anything. I just sit there and watch Gray Zabel. I watch two people. I watch Gray Zabel on offense, and then when they go over to the defense, I watch Leonard Williams.
Yes.
That's it. And I really want my TV to invent something to where the camera's just on those two people. Like, I just want them. Like, I want just a isolated camera different angles where I can see both those guys. So for Zabel, Arroyo, who hasn't done much yet, but potential is there, just shaping up to be a really, really, really good rookie class. So I'm excited to see what's in store from the rest of the year.
And just have a word on Leonard Williams before we finish, just because I just think he is incredible. It really is a pleasure to watch him play. And it's been so long, think of the years we had to watch Aaron Donald in LA and St. Louis, and you think of sort of the Chris Jones at Kansas City, and you think, wow, wouldn't it be great to have somebody like that who just you can line him up pretty much anywhere, but from the interior, and they just blow things up. And that's Leonard Williams. I'm exactly with you. Like every single defensive down, I'm looking for where Leonard Williams is, and you just watch him having an impact all of the time, and he looks amazing. Like he is legitimately one of the best players in the NFL, the way that he's playing right now. And I feel like we talk about it, and I've done a couple of weeks of trying to say that he's this good, and I know other people have as well. And yet nationally, Puck, it doesn't seem like enough people talk about Leonard Williams, and I think that's a disgrace, really. I mean, there's so many players who get promoted and overrated and talked about. There should be more Leonard Williams. We should start the campaign to make Leonard Williams more prominent in the national coverage.
Hey, it's like, this would make our guy that we had dinner with happy. Let's make a hat that says, "Make Leonard Williams great again."
Yeah. Yeah, I'm down. Yeah. You might struggle to get all of that on a hat, but we can have a try.
It's a little wordy. It's a little wordy. Inside the Bloody Trenches with Rob Staton, SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Go check out the website. Also follow Rob on social media, Rob Staton. Check out his YouTube page as well. He's put videos up there left and right. Gazillion people watch. Rob Staton Football. His weekly appearance brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, makers of Manny's Pale Ale, Bodhisattva, Rogers Pilsner, and their new Tavern Beer. A tasting room and beer garden open daily from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Visit them at georgetownbeer.com. All right. Enjoy the weekend of football, and we will reconvene next week. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, enjoy the Mariners game and enjoy the Ryder Cup.